Hello and welcome to Evasion at Aisle 5. I'm Brad Storan. I'm the Global Red Team Manager at BDO. I also head up the DFIR department as well. I come from quite an interesting background of private investigation, where I learned a love of breaking in covertly to places. So today, we're going to run through a nice red team engagement. It's a red team engagement by one of the largest supermarket chains in the UK. Let's call them Jesco. So Jesco have asked us to perform a red team, but it's a full adversary simulation. So we're going to go external, internal, and we're going to break into one of their buildings. But I would like you guys to join in. I want to make it interactive. So whilst we start, can I just take a show of hands of blue teamers? Right, good. We're hopefully going to avoid you, eh? A show of hand of C-suites, any IT directors, etc. Cool. And finally, any hackers, aspiring hackers? Cool. One more. IT admins, please show your hands. Just you? I'm so sorry. Okay, cool. So let's start with some flags. So the client has set us multiple flags, and as per any red team, we need to try and capture them in any way that we possibly can. So we start externally. They've asked us to compromise accounts. All we need to do is compromise an account. It could be via phishing, smishing. We could befriend an employee. We could go dumpster diving for their password, or we could simply just guess it. Physically, they want us to gain access to one of their depots. Their depots, for them, as a supermarket chain, is one of the largest targets that they have. The supermarket chain itself has multiple depots across the country. They haven't shared which one they want us to break into, and we have free reign of choosing it. But there's quite a severe footfall at the depots, so it's pretty good for us. The second flag they want us to capture once we break in, fighting talk I know, we need to successfully deploy a network beacon. Internally, they want us to compromise multiple domains. It's not just the one, and the last one is on their parent domain. The last and the most important flag of any red team is do not get caught. We're working against the SOC, sorry blue teamers, and we need to try and evade you in every way we possibly can. So, let's start with some OSINT, or open source intelligence for those who don't know. OSINT is the most important phase of any red team. We need to think about what the client is exposing and how we can use that to exploit them. So we start with some subdomain enumeration. The subdomain enumeration phase is really important because we need to know what the client's exposing. So we can start with some DNS and enum, looking at their registered SSL certificates. A good site for this is called cert.sh. Finally, we can just do some simple Google dorking to identify any subdomains that we haven't picked up yet. The second area we're going to look at is usernames. And usernames are super duper important because our external flag is to compromise an account. If we need to compromise an account but we don't know what usernames they have, how the fuck are we going to do it? So, we start looking on social media. We extract their information from LinkedIn. We can rob all their information because everyone loves social media. So they register their company and they say, proudly, this is my job title. We're going to aim for C-suites, any big dogs that we can try and break into. Because, unfortunately, you're not very renowned for having good passwords. The second thing we can look at is previous breaches. Now, for the past 7 or so years, I've been creating a database of previous breaches. A bit like Have I Been Pwned, if any of you know it. But this is really important for us during our red team because it means that we can look back at previous passwords set, and when we try and compromise accounts later on, we can extract the information and use it to our advantage. The second thing is the very well-known social media site I mentioned earlier also has been breached quite a few times in the past couple of years, which is really good for us because not only can we extract the company emails, but we can extract their mobile numbers for any future phishing. We can also extract their job roles and any other juicy information that we need. The final stage of OSINT I'm going to run through is, now that we've gathered the info, we need to try and look at the data that the client is exposing. Is there any documents that we can see, that we can extract, that will help us reach our goals? Remember, it's a flag-based exercise, so we need to reach them. So, firstly, we can look at the subdomains that we very nicely enumerated earlier. The subdomains we get a bit unlucky with. We hit the first 4, 5, and then we come across their extranet, which they very nicely shared a pretty shit password policy on. Thank you, Jesco. So Jesco have shared this password policy to help their clients design a secure tenancy and secure logging on. However, we can see from it that they're only enforcing an 8-character password, upper and lowercase alphanumericals, and 1 numerical. But no special case. So it's a pretty good start. We can actually spray just password with a 0 and a capital P, and we'll probably get some accounts. The second place we can look at is social media again. Now, Jesco very, very kindly uploaded a pretty nice video of a tour around one of their Scottish depots. And I shit you not, this is actually how I've broken into a depot in the past. But throughout the video, they leak quite a significant amount of information. They leak what we should be wearing, where we go, where IT sit in the building, how they dance, if that's what you're into. But they also leak the entrances, their access cards, so we can just clone what they look like. The final place we can look at, and this is quite important when we're doing a physical breach, but we can look at the government sites for some planning permission documents. Now, when someone applies for planning permission, they upload a floor plan. And these floor plans for us, and later on when we eventually break into their building, are really useful. So we know where to go. Now, let's start with the external compromise. Now, this is our first port of call because it's exposed everywhere. We don't need to travel anywhere, and we can use it to extract as much information as we possibly can. So, you guys, where do you think we can start? Just shout out. Password guessing. Thank you, Lewis. A bit of a cheat. I work with them. But we can start with password guessing. Now, password guessing, especially because we know that their password policy is poor, we can simply just spray a couple of passwords. And here we're going to use some nice tools. There's one made by Ellis Spring called Credmaster that uses AWS APIs to obfuscate where we're coming from. So the blue team have no idea that we're compromising accounts. Either way, we start spraying a password. Any guesses of what passwords we're going to use? Password is one of the ones that we're going to use. Anyone else have any guesses? Yep, exactly that. June 2023. Thank you. Put your hand up if you have a month, a season, or a day in your password. Thanks, Circuit. We'll hack you later. So we're going to start spraying summer 2023. This is my absolute favourite, and I always get hits from it. So we start spraying some summer 2023s against the 100 accounts that we've extracted earlier. And bingo, we get 3 accounts hits on summer 2023. But we try and log in, Office 365, shit. There's MFA in place. Not to worry though, because Bo Bullock has designed a really nice tool called MFA Sweep. Now, MFA Sweep checks if there's any misconfigurations in their Office 365 MFA deployment. And you guessed it, there is. The API configuration for their deployment is incorrect, which means that we can just bypass MFA and then run a tool called Azure Hound. Azure Hound is a bloodhound collector. If Spectre Ops were in the room, could work, but catch them up later because their tool is wicked. But Azure Hound will essentially extract all the information that we need from their Azure tenancy. Now, we've compromised the account and we've extracted a whole bunch of passwords. But we were only running it against a small sample. Now we have over 1,500 accounts. So we just go back to the password guessing stage. And this is where the password 1 comes in really handy. In fact, we compromise now a server's account. Now, server's accounts are really juicy for us because they run internal services. But people that Azure sync them don't ever think about logging in and setting MFA, which means that when we compromise the server's account using our lovely password 1, thank you very much, we can just bypass MFA by entering our own number. And bingo, we're into their Office 365, we've compromised their external perimeter, and we can start our share drive enum. So SharePoint, sorry to the singular IT admin in the room, is a really good tool for companies. However, it seems to be consistently misconfigured. Now, SharePoint is misconfigured in such a way that it seems to be the IT documents are always leaked. And for our enumeration, we've now extracted server listings, what tools, security tools that they're using, what SOC they're using, and it's the famous 3-letter one. What else they're leaking is some RFID documents against that nice Scottish depot that we saw in the YouTube video earlier. And we now know that at the Scottish depot, the RFID access controls are outdated and pretty poor. Great news for us. So we all jump on a plane and we hop off to Scotland. We know it's their weakness. We know that that's their weak site. But you arrive and the place fucking looks like Fort Knox. You start shitting yourself. You're a bit adrenaline rushy and you think, oh, I can't get in here. There's absolutely no way. So you walk around the building and I kid you not, the place has air-gapped fencing. The internal fence is electric, which means that you can pretty much throw away your bolt cutters unless you want to have a nice pointy up hair. And there's CCTV cameras everywhere, which also means that we're probably going to get caught as soon as we try and break in. There's man traps on all entrances with RFID controls, as expected. But there is a car park. Now, Jesco have very kindly left the barriers open. So we walk into the car park dressed in our nice high-vis cargo pants, exactly like they did in the video. Absolutely no one inside is expecting us to be an outsider. Great for us. So we walk through and we walk through the staff car park, blah, blah. And shit. We reach another internal man trap. What are we going to do now? So, what are we going to do now? How do you guys think that we should bypass that internal man trap? Indeed. However, we're going to go down a slightly different route, but we are going to socially engineer them. So we socially engineer, you guys walk up to the card reader, pretend like you're fixing it. I go up to the card reader too, and Joe finishes his cigarette break. Joe wanders up, he says, what's going on? Can I go in? We said, sorry Joe, we're from IT. Do you mind if you give us your card? We're just checking that it's working because it's been quite faulty today. Joe very kindly hands over his card. Little did he know, we scan it on our Flipper Zero, we clone the RFID from it, and bingo, we've got one cloned card. So now we've got our in. But let's not go in yet, because there's no point. We take that clone card on our Flipper Zero, and we go back to the pub. Why not? We've accomplished our external goal. We can pretty much break in as soon as we want. So we go back to the pub, we have a nice pint of Guinness, calm down our nerves, pretty like adrenaline pumps at this point. And we write it from our Flipper Zero onto the staff cards that they exposed in that very nice YouTube video earlier using the Proxmark. Proxmark's a great tool. I advise any physical people to look into it if they don't know it. But we've now cloned the card and we've got it on our own staff cards. So now all we need to do is go back on site and drop our network beacon. If you remember, that was our final flag within physical compromise. But we don't go back at any time. We go back at 7 p.m. Why do we go back at 7 p.m? Because one, we know that there's no IT going to be there. The offices are going to be empty. IT admins love to finish at 5:30. We also know that that's when the shift starts. So we can walk through the building with about another 100 factory workers and blend in perfectly. So we walk in the building. Obviously, we've got our get out of jail free card, because when Joe finally figures out later that we've cloned his card and broken into the building because of it, he's probably going to punch us in the face. So there's two things that you need. One, a get out of jail free card, but you also need to, once you gain access, get some evidence that you're inside. And Jesco very kindly have left their Staples Santa lying around. So we walk upstairs, we know exactly where we go. We walk in the building, we take a right. We go up the stairs, and unfortunately there's no computers there. Shit, what are we going to do? Everyone's gone home, and they're all using laptops. But we see one network printer, and we attach our network dropper to it. Our network dropper is a tool called FanTap. It's built by NCC Group. It's a really good network dropping tool. Not only does it allow for you to bypass network access control, it clones the device name, so you're not adding a new device to the network. And finally, it has a 4G dongle that you can call home on. So now, we've not only got a device on the network that no one knows what it is, but we've also got an external egress point, so the SOC are going to have absolutely no idea that we're exfiltrating their data. Wicked. We go back to the pub and we have a good couple of guineas. You have to. You've got to celebrate them wins. So we move on to our domain compromise. We're using an SSH tunnel from our dropper back to our C2. It's only SSH, but it's fine. It does everything that we need. So here's what we've already got. We've got credentials. And we know we've got credentials because we've logged on to them externally. So we know they work and we know that they're juicy. We've got server lists. We've extracted them from their SharePoint. We know what security tools they're using. Carbon Black is their EDR. Sophos is their antivirus. And finally, Microsoft Sentinel is their SIEM. We know that they've got multiple domains. Have we compromised one already? Not sure. But we also know that they're migrating their current domain to Azure, which means that it's probably going to be pretty secure because it's only just been built. So from our reverse dropper, or from our reverse tunnel on the dropper, we can run some passive listening tools. We start with Responder, and unfortunately we are plugged into a network printer, so we're on a segregated VLAN. Oh well, what are we going to do? We then look at running some Active Directory enumeration. Now, AD enum is loud as shit. The SOC should identify it. However, from our SharePoint enum, we also know that they're using AD Explorer and Microsoft sysinternal tools. So we can run AD Explorer to export a snapshot of the domain. And we're going to do it at a certain time. Why are we going to do it at a certain time? Because we need to obfuscate when we're running the tool. So we're going to run it at 9 a.m. when everyone else is logging in. This way, when we're pulling all the attributes from the DC, it's going to be slightly hidden by everyone else pulling attributes for their own login. So now we've got AD Explorer Snapshot. We use a tool built by C3C called AD Explorer Snapshot.py, and we can convert the snapshot image that we've taken from AD Explorer into Bloodhound data. Really wicked. You've just converted a DAT file into JSON. We load it into Bloodhound, and what do you guys think we should do now? Remember, we're against the SOC, so we're trying to be as absolutely quiet as we possibly can. We've already extracted all of their domain information, so we want to try and do everything locally now. remember what we've already got. We've got server lists. We've got accounts. But we don't know what they do. So any guesses on where we should go next? HR? Yeah, we could tell HR that they're not very good. But yeah. But we've already got our in. So we've got credentials. So we've got credentials, but we don't know what they do at this point. So we take them credentials and we load them into Bloodhound. And remember that juicy servers account running password 1 earlier? Guess what? It's a server admin, but only to Jesco's second domain. However, it's a server admin, which by default means that we're a domain admin, which is the highest level that we want to achieve on that domain, which is by far the stupidest DA I've ever gotten. An exposed account running password 1. Come on, guys. Right. So now we've got a computer we're DA on, one whole domain. We've only got one more domain that we need to get to, and it's Jesco's domain 1. But we need to find some form of persistence. In a red team, the most upsetting feeling you'll ever find is when you lose that initial beacon, and you lose access to that company. It's the worst, so don't ever try and find a form of persistence. Anyway, we start doing a bit more Bloodhound enum. We look at the old operating systems on the network. And it looks like they're running a 2003 box, which, I don't know how good you are at maths, but it's pretty much 20 years old now. It was pretty crap. So we start doing a bit more research into our security tooling that we have. Carbon Black does support Windows 2003, but only 32-bit, and we can confirm this later on in the article. Fortunately for us, that lovely server is also running 64-bit, so from our reverse dropper, we remote desktop into that box. We're not going to use PSExec, we're not going to run anything that could get us caught by SOC. At this point, we're replicating exactly what an IT admin will do. So we log in, and we don't even need to worry about obfuscating our payload. We just simply drop the simplest of Cobalt Strike beacons. Bingo, we're in. So now we've got this 2003 box, and we're going to use that to connect to everywhere else. Why? Because the SOC is probably going to identify if we're using a network printer to RDP into all of the other boxes. So now we've got a nice little backup of the reverse dropper, or the reverse tunnels from the dropper, and we've got this 2003 box as our persistence mechanism, which gets me swiftly onto where we're going to go next. So the most important phase, like I was saying earlier, is of course enumeration. We need to know what we're up against, and we need to know what we can extract without performing anything malicious. So we start looking for Panther files. These are old deployment files. They don't tend to have passwords in anymore, but sometimes you get a bit lucky. We can look for deployment documents, deployment shares. Have you uploaded your golden image, and are you reusing your password for that image? So are all of the machines on the network using the same password? And we can download that image and extract the SAM and system hives, and then run them against secret stuff. We can also look for memory dumps. Now, memory dumps, from my experience, are about 50% successful. However, they're created upon a server crash, and sometimes they contain the entire of the LSAS process, which means that we can essentially run Mimikatz by exfiltrating this file and loading it into WinDebug or volatility and extracting the passwords in plain text, which is exactly what we want. We can also look for admin tools. I don't know if any more admins have come into the room, but by show of hands, has anyone ever used these tools? Okay. We'll be looking for them. We're also going to run for plain text passwords. We also like finding some nice plain text password documents on desktops. It's a sin of anyone working in IT, and the majority of other people, marketing, other departments as well. And lastly, we can look for SSH keys. This will help us naturally move to Linux boxes that probably won't be holding any EDR either. So now we know what we're looking for, let's start our domain 2, or the final domain compromise. We know we're going to start with server enum, but we start enumerating through services, and again, we're only going to be using RDP. We're not going to piss around with anything that will get us caught, because things like PSExec are so heavily fingerprinted now, they will get alerted. So we're just going to RDP into other servers. We log into about 2 or 3, and we find 1 or 2 memory dumps. Fortunately for us, we've extracted a memory dump, and that memory dump holds a reused local admin password. Wicked. So now, instead of using that DA account that we compromised earlier, we're going to obfuscate where we're coming from by using that admin account. This way, if we do, touch wood, we don't get caught by the SOC, they're only going to disable that local admin account, which is actually really difficult. But they're going to disable that local admin account, and then we're going to have a backup as our DA. Either way, we're about 5 or 6 servers in now, RDPing into them all, and we're actually going to RDP-section it. So we log in from our 2003, we move over to a 2008 box, and then to a 2012. This way, if we get caught along the chain, they're probably not going to expect that we're at the 2003 box. Either way, we start enumerating the user data files, or the user profiles, and in one of the app datas is that lovely tool we saw earlier, mremote ng. Now, for all of you that put up your hands, please don't use this tool. It's absolutely not secure. It backs up all of the passwords in an encrypted format, but it has no master password, which means that when we exfiltrate that file, it's an XML, we load it into a local version of mremote ng, and we can simply just export the plain text passwords in CSV format. Wicked for us, because we've also just compromised their ESXi. ESXi is a really, really good tool for us to use when we're performing a red team. Why? Because, one, ESXi came out a couple of weeks ago and said ESXi does not support any EDR. In fact, they said they don't support any security tooling because it's not meant to be that way. Go speak to them. I would. Either way, we've now jumped into the ESXi, and we can also now exploit one more thing, and it's IT creating backups of VMs. Now, we have access to ESXi. We can start and stop machines, whatever. But we don't want to make noise, and Blue Team are probably going to catch on if we start just turning off servers. But fortunately for us, Adam, let's call him, the IT admin, has made a backup of their newly migrated domain. So we just simply back that domain controller, or download that domain controller. We load it into 7-zip and extract the SAM, system and security hives. Finally, the ntds.dit. And I don't know if any of you saw Andy's talk earlier, but the ntds.dit is the golden file. We call it a golden waterfall, but it's not the same as... Either way, we've now completely owned the company. We've loaded these files into secrets dump, and bingo, we've achieved every single flag that the company has set. Wicked for us. So let me just do a quick recap before we move on to questions, although I'm not sure we have time. 1, when you're performing a red team, enumeration is the most important phase. If you don't know what you don't know, you're not going to get anywhere. 2nd, act as a human would. Why are we using malicious commands? Why are we using PowerShell when we know that IT admin actions cannot be alerted every time they're used? 3, look for hosts that can't use EDR. I covered a 2003 box and ESXi, but things like VoIP phones, printers, great targets for us because they just simply can't support it. And this is literally the weakness of the company. Let's exploit it. The 4th point is just look for some useful files. I covered memory dumps. I covered mremote ng. WinSSH term is very similar. You have to download and exfiltrate the entire configuration, the entire document file, but you can just simply load it up. And finally, if we use all of this, you can absolutely compromise any red team that you want to. Thank you, and do you have any questions?